Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Apprenticeship Week at EPUT. So for the next hour, we've got various colleagues who are going to be talking to you about the apprenticeship opportunities at EPUT, and there are quite a lot of them. We've been delivering apprenticeships at EPUT for a few years now, but still find that some people are unsure about what an apprenticeship is, how they could apply for one, is there one appropriate for their role? But over the years, we've been increasing the number of different apprenticeship programs that we're offering as well now. And I think you're going to be surprised at the number that there are there. The other thing that we've also been very keen to do is to try to put those apprenticeships into pathways so that you can actually start at the level that is appropriate for you and build up towards, if you want to, a professional qualification in one of the many types of roles that we have at EPUT. So today, we've got some of the people who are involved in the apprenticeship programs here to talk to you about the course, the program that they deliver, talking to you about what potential entry requirements there are, what the apprenticeship programs involve in terms of study. But the most important thing about an apprenticeship really is that it's tailored to you as well. So you can study it at your own speed whilst you're working and earning and learning. And that's the idea of an apprenticeship. So it's learning that's around the role that you're in, and it's giving you the qualification to perform that role to the maximum of your potential and to start on a pathway of learning and career development as far as you want to and at the speed that you want to as well. So we've built this up over the years, and now we have apprenticeships available on not just the nursing pathway, but also on many of our AHP pathways as well. And we've got colleagues here to talk to you about occupational therapy apprenticeships and physiotherapy apprenticeships. And also, just this year, we've launched our psychology for the clinical associate in psychology apprenticeship as well. The apprenticeships are also at different levels, as I said earlier. So we've got apprenticeships from entry level almost, level 2, which is equivalent to GCSEs. They can also encapsulate additional qualifications in maths and English. In fact, every apprenticeship has to offer maths and English up to GCSE level. But also our psychology one, which I just mentioned, is actually at master's level. So apprenticeships can go right the way through from quite GCSE levels right up to degree levels and beyond, up to master's levels. And so it's choosing the apprenticeship that is appropriate for the role that you're in, for the learning that you want to do, and for the career development that you are interested in. So the format of today, as I say, it's a celebration of Apprenticeship Week. Each of my colleagues is going to give a short discussion about their programme, what it involves, the sort of learning that you will do, the number of study days that you have, the sort of assignments you might have, the practical work that's involved as well. And then there will be an opportunity for you to put questions to the panel and have those answered. So it really is the opportunity to get all those issues and problems and queries that you've got about apprenticeships resolved. We'll be here for about an hour, I think, and so it'll give you plenty of time whilst you're going through the conversations that my colleagues are going to deliver to think about those questions and ask any burning questions that you've got at this time. Currently in EPUT, we have getting on for 300 apprentices, so it's about 250 apprentices at this time. That has grown over the years. At the moment, we've got about 2.8% of our workforce is on an apprenticeship. Now, might sound very much, but as I say, in actual fact, that equates to nearly 260, 270 apprentices. And we're hoping to grow more. In fact, we're growing all the time. So take this opportunity, think about apprenticeships, what it could mean to you, get those questions ready, and listen to my colleagues as they will tell you about the apprenticeships that they're involved in delivering. So I'm going to hand over now, I think, to Yvonne, who's going to talk about the nursing pathway.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Apprenticeships event. And as Anthea has already said, we are really keen within the Trust to develop and encourage our staff to progress through their pathways. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the health and social care pathways which we offer, both in-house and externally. And these lead into some of the other qualifications that my colleagues are going to be discussing. So first of all, talk a bit about functional skills, so because some people worry about their maths and English levels, and this is an area that we've looked at very closely, and we now allow functional skills to be delivered as part of our apprenticeships in addition to them at level 2. So when we're talking about functional skills being necessitated as part of the qualifications, don't worry if you don't actually have that qualification, because we can help support you with undertaking that qualification within your apprenticeship. And that's a new thing that we've been able to set up in the last few months. So that's an excellent new point for us. So we start our pathways at a level 2-3 in health and social care, and this is called the Senior Healthcare Support Worker pathway. And this is delivered, is an 18-month apprenticeship, and addition to that, we look at the functional skills as well. So if you've already got functional skills, you wouldn't need to redo that, but we do ask that as part of the apprenticeship that you would undertake those functional skills. We also ask for you to complete your care certificate, which is really important because every healthcare support worker needs to have that care certificate, and rehab assistants all the same. So the Senior Healthcare Support Worker is an 18-month apprenticeship plus 3 months what's called endpoint assessment. Now, endpoint assessment is undertaken in every apprenticeship route, and this is by an external partners that undertake these normally. Sometimes they're undertaken in-house, but generally they're undertaken externally. And that allows you to present what you've been learning during your apprenticeship. The Senior Healthcare Support Worker has an apprenticeship standard that works with it, and the qualification is embedded into that standard. So we make sure that you reach all the points that are required within that. It's delivered by the education team within EPUT, and it is delivered across different training bases within the Trust, right across the organisation. And we use what's called a blended learning approach. This has really come about more so since COVID, and we use Microsoft Teams, which a lot of you use within your practices now already. And we also do face-to-face delivery as well, which is undertaken in our training rooms. So with the level 3, you attend 2 delivered sessions per month, 2 days delivery during the month, and these look at the different units within that standard. And in the Senior Healthcare Support Worker, there are 51 units, but that doesn't mean to say you have to undertake all those units, because they are looked at and modified in relation to where you want to progress and how you want to move forward. So there are pathways which look at adult and mental health and allied health professionals, and you would have specific modules which are set up around those specific pathways, as well as your core modules. And my colleagues will talk to you a little bit about how you then follow up into your own specific pathway. Once the level 3 qualification and apprenticeship is completed and you've done your endpoint assessment, you can then look at furthering your progression onto the level 4-5 qualification, which currently is the Higher National Diploma Healthcare Practice for England Assistant Practitioner qualification. I'm sorry it's such a long title, but unfortunately that's the programme we use currently. And that is the equivalent of the foundation degree in nursing, in the assistant practitioner. Currently, our AHP colleagues use a slightly different pathway, but I'm sure they will be talking to you about that. The assistant practitioner standard is a higher apprenticeship. It is a 2-year programme, and we do ask for applicants who are coming into that programme to have the functional skills, although we will look at people on an individual basis if they haven't got that, because as I've said, we are able to deliver that alongside the apprenticeship, but it is just a little bit more complicated because the level 4-5 is a much more academic level than the level 3. But it is possible to apply for that. So don't let that put you off applying for the programme. The level 4-5 has currently 14 units within it, and we look at all things across the board in relation to legislation, law, practice, how you work in your own teams, and we let you use your experiences to help support your work. And you will be really well supported by the staff in your teams. And you have a practice document, as do the student nurses that are with you out in practice, and you work with your supervisors to support that. That also happens in level 3 as well. To help ensure that you get a really broad range of experience, we also facilitate you having alternative placements within the trust. Some of these might be in completely different practice areas to what you're in now, because this helps underpin your knowledge and skills and really hone in and develop your progression into your chosen pathways. We also have another pathway which is called the Trainee Nurse Associate. This is at the same level as the level 4-5 pathway, but this is delivered slightly differently and is delivered by one of our partnership universities. Currently, this also has a blended learning approach, and you are placed within a team and you are based within there, and then you undertake your learning from that. The qualifications required for that are very similar to the level 4-5, and we would really encourage that you had the level 3 before you undertook the level 4-5, because it helps you get that baseline knowledge and understanding on how to take the learning forward. You're also required for that to undertake the functional skills, but again, that can be taken as part of your apprenticeship if you require that. So don't let that put you off applying either. We also have recently set up a pilot of doing a study skills module to really help support that, bridging that gap between level 3 before you go on to your foundation degree level programs. And that looks at things like referencing, how to write academically, how to use knowledge that you have and to put that down on paper, because it's really important that we can hone those skills down and support you ready for your further progression. Just check, once you've completed the TNA program or the level 4-5, there's also then the possibility of going on to complete your studies and further apprenticeship with the nurse degree apprenticeship top-up, we call it, but it's actually the second part of the Bachelor of Science degree, which is the 2nd and 3rd years of the nursing qualification. Once you complete that qualification at our partnership universities, you would then be able to enter the register for the NMC for nursing. We can also add that the Nurse Associate programme also has its own registration level with the Nursing and Midwifery Council as well. So you would have a registration for both of those qualifications. So this is a really fantastic pathway to help support your development within EPUT. And any of you who are interested, I will put some links into the standards, into the chat, and who to contact within our team to get further information. One thing I will add, it's really important that you have your discussions with your managers in your supervision regarding wishing to progress, because you will need to have their support to complete your study leave applications. But if you have any concerns regarding that, you're more than welcome to contact any of us within the team and we can help support you. Thank you very much.
Just to reiterate what Yvonne was saying, you do need your manager's support to undertake any of these forms of study. So it's really important that the earliest stages you start talking to your manager about this. However, EPUT has and is committed very much to staff development, and especially to these programs which are enabling us to grow our own professional workforce. So as Yvonne said, if you do have any worries about contacting your manager, or you want to find out more before you do that, please contact us and we'll give you all the support and all the information that you need in order to be confident to do that. Okay, so I think now I'm going to go over to Sarah, who is going to talk to you about the occupational therapy pathway.
Good afternoon. I'm actually going to talk wider than the occupational therapy pathway, but I am certainly going to include that. My name's Sarah Sprackling. I'm the Allied Health Professions Lead for Mental Health and Learning Disability in EPUT, and I lead on Allied Health Professions, Student Education and Apprenticeships. The Allied Health Professions Group are a group of 14 identified professions, so it's a wide group. Occupational therapy is one of them, but there are 14 allied health professions. They're not all represented in EPUT, but several of them are represented in EPUT. And at present, we have identified apprenticeship routes for some of those 14 professions, not all of them yet, but some of them we have apprenticeship routes, and there are plans to look at other professions as well to have apprenticeship routes. All of our degree apprenticeship routes are offered through a selection process where people have to meet the criteria, which includes various things which Yvonne's already spoken about. So there are specific qualification criteria for degree apprenticeships. Everyone needs their manager's approval and support, and I'd really reiterate that to try and, if it's something you're interested in, make sure it's identified in your supervision, make sure it's identified in your appraisal. It needs to be part of a plan that you've come up with your service and with your manager, to ensure that it's appropriate and that you're supported in completing an apprenticeship. You have to be in a profession specific appropriate role, so the role you're in needs to have people of that profession around you, supporting you, supervising you, and you have to be working a minimum of 30 hours a week at EPUT. So those are some of the criteria for the various degree apprenticeships. There are all the standards are on the HASO Skills for Health website, which when I've finished I'll put into the chat so that people can see those. So that's that each of the profession standards are in there, and that's quite useful for you to look through, because obviously I'm not going to be able to give the detail of everything today. But starting with the occupational therapy degree apprenticeship, because we already do have OT degree apprentices in EPUT, we have these, our current apprentices are studying at the University of Hertfordshire, Coventry University and the University of Essex. They all work in teams where there are qualified occupational therapists and learn through a combination of university attendance and learning and applying the learning on the job, which is the whole sort of push behind an apprenticeship. At the end of their training, which is usually lasts either 3 or 4 years, depending on which course, they'll gain a degree in occupational therapy and be eligible then to for HCPC registration as an occupational therapist. The degree apprenticeship needs, as well as the functional skills, the level 2 English and maths that all apprenticeships need. It needs a minimum of 2 level 3, which is A-level equivalent qualifications, and requires some evidence of recent study. So those are things that we can look at individually with people. There is some flexibility with our Essex University route. So our Essex University route is a real groundbreaking occupational degree apprenticeship route. It's a 2x2 model. The first 2 years you study to become a healthcare associate practitioner, which is a foundation degree and gives a standalone level 5 qualification, very similar to the one that Yvonne was speaking about. But there are specific modules in occupational therapy. There is then the option to go on to do another 2 years top up to make a degree in occupational therapy. So that's quite a flexible route, and because of that it only needs one. It needs less of the level 3. You still need a level 3 qualification, but not quite as many points as the more traditional route. We also have a 3-year OT degree apprenticeship through the University of Hearts. So there's 2 routes at the moment for our occupational therapy degree apprentices. The university attendance is mostly 1 day a week, but there are points in there are points in some of the courses that involve 2 days a week or a block attendance, and at present they're moving to face-to-face, all of it being face-to-face learning, but it has been virtual and some of it is still delivered virtually. The training also requires periods of clinical placement, and that is in different services to the one where the apprentice is based. Placements vary in length. They're generally around 6 weeks, but they do vary from course to course, and they may be with an EPUT or they may be with a different provider. So that covers our OT degree apprenticeships. We also are starting the speech and language therapy degree apprenticeship route. We're hoping to put forward a cohort in September 2022, so this year, to the University of Essex, and that's following the same route as the occupational therapy degree apprenticeship. So 2 years doing the HAP standalone healthcare associate practitioner standalone foundation degree with modules in speech and language therapy, followed by the option of a 2-year top up to gain a degree in speech and language therapy and be eligible for HCPC registration as a speech and language therapist. Again, very similar to, as I've said, for the occupational therapy one, it involves placements. They're slightly different structures, but it will involve placements in other teams, and requires a level 3 qualification as well as the functional skills that all apprenticeships need. We're also very excitingly planning to start a physiotherapy degree apprenticeship in September this year. We've been working as part of a collaboration of employers in the Suffolk and North East Essex ICS area, working with University of Essex to start a local physiotherapy degree apprenticeship, which is subject to the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy, who are actually doing the approval panel today, so that's quite timely. And as I said, we're hoping to start at the first cohort in September. We're starting the selection process at the moment from existing support staff, the same as we are with the occupational therapy and the speech and language therapy routes. The physiotherapy programme will be 3 years and 1 term, so it's in between the 3 and 4 years. There'll be 4 full-time placements in different clinical settings. Entry requirements will be level 3 qualifications again, and there's a need for a strong theoretical science component. So again, that's something that needs to be evidenced. So as I said, we're currently selecting candidates for the September cohorts for those 3 degree apprenticeships, and would encourage anyone who's not registered interest to contact, again, I'll put the contacts in, but Heidi Cox or me as soon as possible to register interest. So those are at the moment we're supporting therapy support staff in existing roles rather than specific apprenticeship roles. But in the future, we're expecting to have a recruit to identified apprenticeship specific roles. Our other apprenticeship that we currently offer at EPUT is the podiatry degree apprenticeship. Now that we currently have an apprentice sitting in a specific apprenticeship role, so they've been recruited into an apprenticeship role, and they're based in a podiatry team, and they're also studying at the University of East London, where they're doing a very similar process, that it's a day a week at university and applied learning in the workplace, and that is a 4-year degree apprenticeship. So again, as I said, I will put the link to the different standards into the chat. In the future, we're looking at hopefully being able to offer a dietitian degree apprenticeship, which I've just been on a meeting this morning with the University of East London, who are hoping to set up a programme in that. There's also nationally, there is an agreed apprenticeship standard for art therapy, an art therapy degree apprenticeship. We don't currently offer that, but again, it's hoped in the future. And just to finish up, to say, Yvonne spoke about the senior healthcare support worker, the level 3 apprenticeship offered in-house. We're very excited that we've now got an AHP route linked into that. So from this year, we're putting forward a cohort of support workers who can be part of that and have specific, at the moment we're going with occupational therapy, but can have specific occupational therapy modules as part of that, which enables people to either develop themselves in a support worker role, so at the moment occupational therapy support worker role, but also gives them the chance to gain a level 3 qualification if they don't have those, that would then help them to go forward for a degree apprenticeship. So we're also very keen on that, to train up some OTs as apprentice assessors, so that's something else to think about if we've got any qualified OTs on the line, and in the future we're hoping to do other AHP routes in that. So as I said, for any we'll do the questions, but do let us know of any interest in those pathways. And I'm now going to hand you back to Anthea.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. And just to pick up on a few of the important points Sarah made there, if you're thinking of an apprenticeship, you do have to be in a role appropriate to the apprenticeship that you want to study, to enable you to practice the skills, etc., and have the information to manage the learning. At EPUT, we are beginning to advertise some roles that are apprenticeship specific. So in other words, when you start your career or your job with EPUT, it would be as an apprenticeship. But we are also offering these opportunities to existing staff. So if you are interested in an apprenticeship and already working for EPUT, then do contact us and we can tell you about it. There are our limitations, so you do have to have a job that is at least 30 hours a week to enable you to meet the apprenticeship requirements. And equally, if you haven't got the level 3 qualification as yet, as Sarah said, we are beginning to extend that level 3 qualification so that it will be appropriate to whichever clinical pathway you want to go into. At the moment, that is for the nursing pathway and for OT, but in the future we hope that we'll be able to offer the optional modules which would enable you to do some of the other AHP pathways as well. So opportunities are expanding all the time. Now, Sarah mentioned the physiotherapy apprenticeship, which we are hoping to start soon. And I'm going to hand over to Mobolaji, who'll be able to tell you a little bit more about the plans for that.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Mobolaji Louis. I'm head of physiotherapy in mental health. Just to give a bit more flesh to the physiotherapy apprenticeship coming soon from September, where we'll be hoping to have the first cohort. I've just been in the meeting with the CSP today, and it looks very positive, all going ahead. So like Sarah has already pointed out, we'll be soon be putting out some information about this, where both managers and interested candidates can actually learn a lot more about the physiotherapy apprenticeship coming up, and then be able to express their interest in that. And then we'll take as many questions as possible as well through that forum. So that's kind of where we are with that. I think Sarah's already given details of what is expected at level 3, and also should have some significant level of science background in it as well. And if you have more, you want to know more about it, you can, or you are interested in applying into that, please, you can link up with Sarah or Heidi Cox to put in your interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mobolaji. And now I'm going to hand over to Barbara, who is going to tell you a little bit about our apprenticeship that's for the clinical associates in psychology, which is the master's level apprenticeship that I was talking about earlier. Barbara.
Great. Thanks, Anthea. Hello, everybody. I'm Barbara Mason. I'm going to talk to you today about the apprenticeships that we're offering in the Psychological Services Directorate, so within the psychological professions. I'm primarily going to talk to you about the Clinical Associate in Psychology, our Level 7 apprenticeship, which we deliver within EPUT, but also mention to you the Psychological Wellbeing Practitioner apprenticeships as well that we're also offering within the Trust. So what are these two jobs? So PWP, Psychological Wellbeing Practitioners, this is a Level 6 apprenticeship, so the equivalent of a degree or a graduate diploma. It runs for 12 months. I'll tell you a little bit more about it, but PWPs tend to work within primary care, within our improving access to psychological therapy services, typically working with people experiencing mild to moderate anxiety and depression, delivering fairly structured evidence-based psychological interventions under supervision, also undertaking some structured assessments of people's needs, and delivery maybe over the phone, online, in groups, in a variety of different primary care settings. So typically people working in these roles have got quite a high caseload and are delivering interventions, as I said, with people with mild to moderate common mental health difficulties. So that's the PWP role. And I'll tell you a little bit more in a minute about the actual training routes for that. We also have clinical associate in psychology roles within the trust, and this is a level 7 apprenticeship or a master's level apprenticeship, and it takes 18 months to complete. Now you might be wondering what a CAP is. It's a fairly new professional role. So CAPs tend to work in a variety of different settings, currently primarily mental health settings, but CAPs are also now being trained to work in schools and with children and young people. They tend to be working in services for people who have more complex mental health difficulties. And for those of you who are familiar with the psychological professions, a CAP sort of sits between a graduate level assistant psychologist and a doctoral level qualified clinical or counselling psychologist. So in that space in between at master's level, CAPs are trained to develop a range of different evidence-based psychological assessments and interventions, as well as to do other things around that. So indirect types of work, such as supporting other the staff, running training, getting involved in applied research, audit and service evaluation. So it's quite a broad role that includes both clinical and indirect work within that broader scope of psychological delivery. So in terms of entry requirements, the PWP apprenticeships require a level 5 qualification or equivalent. So it might be, for some people will come in with a degree level, for others it is that level 5 or higher national diploma level entry requirement. As with the other degree apprenticeships, the level 2 maths and English are also required, but can be undertaken in parallel with the apprenticeship. For the CAP degree apprenticeship, the requirement is quite significantly higher because this is now a master's degree. So the entry is that people have an honours degree in psychology or equivalent. They also have to have eligibility for what's called graduate basis for chartered membership of the British Psychological Society. That's a mouthful, but what that actually means is that if you've done a psychology degree, that you've done a psychology degree that's accredited by the British Psychological Society. Typically for both PWP and CAP roles, we would expect people to have had some previous experience that was relevant to work in a mental health setting or in some kind of psychological practice. So degree qualification plus some experience. Now, what's a bit different about the apprenticeships that we're offering in the psych services pathway, particularly the CAPS, is that these are dedicated apprenticeship roles. So whilst an internal candidate can certainly apply for them, for these apprenticeships, typically you're looking for them on NHS jobs and you apply for a dedicated apprenticeship role within a specific service. So it's just like applying for any other job in the NHS. The dedicated apprenticeships, you don't have to then be asking for permission for the training because it's part of the job role that you would be undertaking. So in terms of what the training looks like, it's probably quite similar to what my colleagues have described. So also using a blended learning approach, some things in person, some things online. Like all the apprenticeships, a lot of the learning takes place within the workplace. So both PWP and CAP apprentices would be working under the supervision of a qualified practitioner who would be overseeing their work, supporting them with their skills development, and also assessing their competencies as they progress through the training. On the CAP program, we deliver this ourselves as a trust. So we're the main provider for CAP apprenticeship training. And what this means is that we actually also train CAP apprentices who work in other trusts locally. So in our current group, we have CAP apprentices who are employed in jobs in EPUT. We have some who are employed in ESNEFT. We have some employed in Hertfordshire Partnership Trust, HPFT, and we have some employed in ELFT, East London Foundation Trust. So it might be that you apply for a job that's in fact in a surrounding trust, but that you come and do your training with us in EPUT. Our program is validated by the University of Essex, so people who do this MSc come out with a master's degree from the University of Essex. And like many of the other programs, we operate on a day release basis. So typically what would happen is you'd be in your service, you'd be undertaking clinical work, you'd be undertaking various activities that support your learning. And then one day a week, you'd be attending lectures, not dissimilar to what you'd expect at university. So workshops, small group work, seminars, and so on and so forth. We also include a lot of simulation because, of course, they're practical skills to learn. So you would be doing role plays, simulations of clinical work, as well as engaging in small group work, in discussions, and as well as in more traditional lecture type engagement. We also include a variety of assessments. So again, like any other degree, you would be expected to have written assignments, for example, as well as assessments of your clinical practice. So one of the things that we do is that our learners will undertake a piece of clinical work that will be observed or recorded, and their supervisor will then give them really detailed feedback on the skills that they're evidencing, for example. So it's very closely linked to the skills that you would be developing within the training program. Our module will cover things from professional ethics through assessment skills, what we call psychological formulation, which is how you make links between psychological theory and making sense of the difficulties that somebody might be having or presenting in front of you. There's also a lot of teaching around the different types of psychological presentations and how distress might manifest for people, as well as the related skills around things like applied research, skills in working with teams and with wider systems, working with difference and diversity. So it's quite a broad scope in the training program. In the similar way, the PWP program also has a number of modules, as you would have in the degree-based delivery, also including different formats of presentation. For our current PWPs, their training is being delivered by the University of Essex, so they're actually joining the University PWP group and going along to lectures with them, all online at the moment, but in future we hope there will be some face-to-face again. Before I end, I suppose I just wanted to say something about progression opportunities, because some of you might be, and entry opportunities, as some of you might be wondering about that. So coming into a PWP apprenticeship, you can come in with relevant experience, but without a degree level qualification. So you need something at level 5. So there's a possibility of progressing from a level 2 apprenticeship through a level from a level 3 apprenticeship through a level 5 apprenticeship and on into the PWP, which is a level 6 apprenticeship. In terms of progression from there, PWPs can move on to become a senior PWP in future. And there are opportunities also then to undertake additional training, although for Health Education England funded training, the requirement is that people work in the role for a couple of years before progressing on to further funded training. For the CAPs, once you qualify as a CAP, you'd be working in a level in a band 6 role. So it's quite a senior role already. You would be qualified, you'd be able to join the British Psychological Society register. So you'd be registered as a CAP, and there are job role, you would have a job role that you would progress directly into. After working in that for a couple of years, there are progression opportunities as well to undertake further training specific to psychological therapy. So for example, becoming a registered, an accredited psychological therapist of one sort or another. There are leadership opportunities to progress into clinical leadership roles. And there's also the possibility of then applying for doctoral level training to progress into one of the practitioner psychologist training roles. So a number of different opportunities for people to progress even beyond that band 6 role, should they wish to do so. I think that's probably all I'll cover for now, but please do put your questions in the chat, and I will also share the occupational standard link as well in the chat, which will give you more information about the PWP and the CAP roles if you're interested in something on the psychological pathways. And I'll hand back to Anthea. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Just to add that there are also non-clinical apprenticeships as well, some of which are offered at EPUT to some degree. These again, as all apprentices are profession specific. So we do have a few apprentices in our accounts department and HR department, and EPUT is actually developing nationally a corporate administration apprenticeship as well, which will be something that will be suitable for anyone involved in administrative work. I'm just going to briefly hand over to Florence now, who might tell you something a little bit about the apprenticeship opportunities that we've got on offer at the moment. Any issues that there might be around people concerned about contractual issues, and that I'm sure Florence can answer. And then we'll be going to questions.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Anthea. So I know obviously a lot of the detail has been covered by my colleagues here, but it's more of a, if there are any specific queries regarding the onboarding and joining our trust from a recruitment and sort of paperwork perspective, by all means we can cover those, and we are encouraging, as all my colleagues have said, people coming on and joining these apprenticeship courses as a very flexible way of joining our trust and earning as you learn approach. We want all you new joiners to sort of come on board, and we'd like to develop you, create these career pathways for yourselves, and then, you know, at the end of the apprenticeships, because we are such a widespread and large trust, the opportunities that are then available, that are open to you then at the end, are often sort of, well, not endless, but there will be sort of multiple routes that you can then take sort of career pathway wise after that. I think these offer you the chance to, you know, not only develop and earn the qualification, but because you are working at the same time, it really gives you a clear insight to that, you know, particular role that you'd be learning and working in. So these are really fantastic opportunities to come and join us. And, you know, as especially sort of Sarah that was saying, you know, we are developing these and are extending these to other areas as the years go on. So it's certainly something we're all working hard on to get that out open for you. Yeah, from a sort of a recruitment perspective, I suppose it would just be a case of applying for the roles that are coming on, and then the roles that aren't necessarily open specifically as an apprenticeship initially, you can then contact us and we'll push you in the right direction for the apprenticeship enrolment. And, you know, any questions that you do have, the team in HR and recruitment will absolutely support you through that, as well as sort of Anthea and the other apprenticeship teams as well. So any questions at all, if I don't know the answer, we'll certainly point you in the right direction. Yeah, apologies, it's not particularly detailed from my perspective at this stage, but what I'll do, I'll pass you back across to Anthea, and if there is any questions at the end, we have got a survey, so I'll have a look through the chat now as well, and we'll certainly get back to you on those. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Florence. Okay, so now I think, as Florence said, really, it's over to any questions that you might have got for any of the panel. Can EPUT apprenticeship placements be provided through our partners across the South Essex Mental Health Partnership Forum, TrustLink, Safer Steps, etc., or do they have to be exclusive to the NHS? I think the answer to that is no, they don't have to be. If another organisation is happy to offer a placement, and if that placement can give the learning opportunities which meet and match the competencies that you have to obtain from the placement, then it will be we'd be happy to facilitate that. So yes, they can be outside the NHS. It really is about the learning opportunities that a placement affords, and obviously the willingness of the organisation to take somebody. This is from Doris. I have a health and social care level 3 currently working as an HCA, really interested in the apprenticeship programme. Hope you can show us all the criteria. And I think Yvonne, you're going to answer that one?
Yes, certainly. Into the chat, I've popped the links that go down to the apprenticeship standards. They're a little bit further down on the chat, and you can link onto those for the senior healthcare support worker, the assistant practitioner, the nursing associate, and Sarah's also popped some links in for the AHP ones. I'd also encourage you to have a look on the Trust intranet, because there is further information on the Trust intranet. If you go into the search and type in apprenticeships, that will take you to the page linked to the training team, and there's more information about different apprenticeships on there as well. And also I've also popped some names, a couple of names in. So Denise Wickman, she looks at works for the apprenticeship team, and she works as a sort of central point, and then she disseminates any other additional questions out to the members of our team who are best placed to answer them. And also Kim Walsh, who she also helps support the TNA programme and can answer questions about that as well. But if you have any questions at all, you know, any of the team are always welcome, you know, to help you and support you.
Okay, I'm going to take the next two questions together because they're sort of related. There's one from Sam saying, I don't work in EPUT, but am I still able to apply to do an apprenticeship, or is it internal? And then the next one's sort of related to this, is the email sent out indicated that this session was open to friends, family, etc. But you have said that you need to be working for the trust to undertake one. Is there any route in for non-EPUT candidates interested in a degree apprenticeship, having completed A-levels, etc.? I think, as Sarah briefly mentioned in her speech, that we are hoping to open up more apprenticeship posts. In other words, these are posts that would be advertised as an apprenticeship, and she's hoping to open up some in OT. We already have apprenticeship posts in not in the degree apprenticeships at the moment, but in the level 3 and level 5 nursing pathways, so in the support worker or the associate practitioner TNA pathways. Those are already available, and we will hope as we move forward to create more pathways that are direct entry into apprenticeships as such. And I think, Barbara, the CAP pathways are also advertised as CAP externally, aren't they?
They are, yes. Thank you, Anthea.
So the answer to that is yes, there are some already that are advertised as apprenticeship posts, and more will be coming forward as time goes on.
Could I add in, Anthea, that I'd always encourage people to, in the AHP professions, to apply for AHP support roles. There are often OT assistants, physio assistants, speech and language therapy assistant posts that come up, and that's a really good route in to be able to look at apprenticeships as well.
And I think it sort of covers the next one, which is asking the same, but about the podiatry apprenticeship, and again asking whether you have to be already in a role and then apply for the apprenticeship, or whether we're advertising them as roles. I think, Sarah, the podiatry one that we've got currently, how is that recruited to?
So we have one current podiatry apprentice who's in an apprentice specific role. So obviously it's a much smaller profession in EPUT, and that was a role that was set aside for an apprentice. We can't say that that won't happen again. You know, our aim is that it's a really good way of us building our own podiatry workforce. So hopefully there will be other positions that become vacant in the future for podiatry apprentices. But yes, it is an apprenticeship specific post.
But if people were interested in working in podiatry in the meantime, then we have support and assistant roles available quite regularly. This is from Anne. When will applications open for trainee psychological wellbeing practitioners? Barbara, are you able to answer that? No, we don't know yet.
I know that they've got a group who've only recently just started, so I can't imagine it's going to be very soon. But do look out on the NHS jobs pages. That's a good place to keep an eye out. And for the PWP apprenticeships, actually a very good place to look is at the University of Essex apprenticeships section of their website, because the PWP apprenticeships are delivered through the University of Essex, and all of the information, including when their next group will be recruited, will be on that web page. I'll find it and stick it into the chat for you.
Okay, and I think this one's for you, Sarah. Do OTs still complete a variety of placements to qualify whilst on the apprenticeship, or is all the work experience gained from the existing job with EPUT?
No, absolutely. You have to. It's exactly the same requirement as any traditional training, in that you have to complete the same number of clinical hours in clinical placements in a variety of settings. And as I mentioned, sometimes that might be a placement in EPUT in a different service to your own, and sometimes that's a placement with an external organisation, but you have the same breadth of clinical placement experience as you have in a traditional course.
Thank you. And the next one is asking about the apprenticeship link for physiotherapy. I think mobilargy, has that one been put in the chat as well, or?
Yeah,
Is that the standard or the?
Interested in an apprenticeship? I think it's about the standard. Yeah,
I'll add it.
Yeah, we already have the link on the chat in the chat box.
Okay.
Lovely, thank you. Next question: is it possible to do an apprenticeship in another department, profession within the trust, say once or twice a week, and still work the remaining days in your normal role? I think we explained that the apprenticeship has to be a minimum of 30 hours a week. So really the answer to that is no. And I think as with any study of this level and nature, inevitably those 30 hours will still mean that there'll be some time of your own when you're working on your assignments and that. So really the answer to that is no. It is really the apprenticeship that you would have to focus on. Next question from Samuel. If you have a degree already and you want to study occupational therapy, I wonder if this is a funding question. In terms of funding, the apprenticeships study is fully funded, providing you don't already have an equivalent qualification or a qualification which covers a large amount of the knowledge that's already in that. So if you have a degree already, but it was in a completely different subject, you would be eligible for funding. If you had one that had some overlap with the work that would be covered in occupational therapy, then that might cause some issues with the extent of the funding that you would be able to be eligible for. Next question: is it worth applying for the psychology apprenticeship if you don't have any clinical experience? Barbara?
You certainly would be welcome to apply. You'd be much more likely to be successful if you do have some clinical experience. But if we have accepted people who have relevant experience, so it doesn't mean you necessarily have to have worked in a mental health trust. You might have worked for a charity, you might have done some voluntary work, you might have worked as a research assistant, for example. But we do like our graduates to have had some experience before starting on the CAP apprenticeship, because you do get going from day one in clinical practice.
Next question: are employees on fixed term eligible to apply for apprenticeship with EPUT? That would really, I think I'll probably ask Florence to have input onto this one. So that would really depend upon what your fixed term was in, I think. So Florence, what would your answer be to that?
Yeah, sort of following on from Anthea there, really, I think it would depend on what the fixed term was, and then if you were sort of already in that fixed term position and did want to go for an apprenticeship, it'd be a conversation with the manager, I think, to just understand what position, like your current position, if you're able to then take on an apprenticeship and then extend your role there. I think it's certainly not completely ruled out. It's a conversation you can definitely have with your manager, and if they're open to, again, sort of support you in that role as well, because it's really important that that is part of that. And obviously moving from just a standard fixed term role that, say, for example, is full time, as part of the support from your management is then sort of releasing you on certain days of that as well. So it's definitely not a complete rule out. But if you would like any advice on that, you can come to us or the apprenticeship teams, as well as speaking to your manager if you did want some support on that.
I've got a question here about degrees from another country. Would it be considered, and do they need experience? Again, it really depends what your degree is from another country and its equivalents. Recognised equivalents to qualifications in this country, and that's a very individual issue. So we would actually have to look at what your degree was, where it came from, what was covered in it. But again, if we had that the specifics of your situation, then we could look at that for you. And then Samuel again, what kind of support is there for staff with learning disabilities? On a general point, everybody has got an assessment when they start their course for any specific needs, and if that assessment does identify specific learning needs, then we would source the support that is required to meet those learning needs. So we do make sure that our courses are open to people, whatever their specific learning needs might be. Have MSc in clinical psychology, would I still be able to apply for a CAP role? And if so, what are the dates regarding these roles? Barbara?
Hi, yes, you certainly could still apply for a CAP role. We have a number of people who already have master's degrees who come and do the CAP apprenticeship training. The reason you are still eligible is, of course, these other master's degrees tend to be academic degrees and don't qualify you to work as a CAP. So therefore, you're entitled to undertake the further training within the apprenticeship route. So yes, you'd be eligible. In terms of the next intake, we don't do a sort of one intake for a whole cohort. Our CAP apprenticeships are linked to specific posts, so the adverts are generally through NHS Jobs. We will have another group of CAPs being recruited probably around about the late spring and summertime, certainly within EPUT, but do have a look more generally on NHS Jobs because there are CAP apprenticeship posts being advertised all the time, some of which will then come and do their training here and some of which may do their training with other providers, but that's your best place to look for all of the CAP apprenticeship training currently.
Lovely, thank you, Barbara. And then I think our final question, and this is a nice easy one, is there any age limit for the apprenticeship programme? And it's a really lovely positive answer, and the answer is no. You can undertake an apprenticeship at any age, and we do have people on our courses of all sorts of ages. So it's open to everybody. Okay, I think that's a final question. So just to finish off then, so thank you to everybody for attending today. I hope that National Apprenticeship Week has opened up at least given you some ideas to think about a potential apprenticeship as a way forward for your career. I hope also that we've given you some idea of the full range of possibilities that are within EPUT, and it's a very good idea to follow up some of the links that we've put in the chat. Look at the apprenticeship standards on the national database that there is, and look out at EPUT for all the opportunities that we are offering. So thank you very much, and do contact any of us via our email at any time, and we'll be very happy to give you more information and to answer any specific questions that you've got. Thank you again.